Hi, my name is Deb from DG Reads, and this is my 5-star reading sidekick, Kylie, and today we're kicking off a vlog all about reading 5-star authors. For the month of August, I am participating in Battleathon, and if you don't know what that is, it is a fantastic competitive readathon that is hosted by Mel from Melanie Reads, and I am on Team House of Snakes, and that is led by Lexie from Books with Lexie and Becca from Becca in the Books, and is of course, totally unbiased opinion, the best team. The objective of this readathon is to try to read things you're going to love. You get the most points for your team if you find a 5-star book. And I struggle with predicting 5-star reads, and when it comes up in a readathon, I panic, I overthink it, all around just struggle. And in the most recent readathon where it came up, which was the Amazing Readathon, I decided to think of it a different way. For my 5-star prediction, I picked a book by an author I had previously given 5 stars to, because if I've loved their books in the past, there's a good chance I'll love their books in the future. Obviously, if they write something in a totally different genre or a synopsis that sounds horrible, I wouldn't pick it up for a 5-star prediction. But as long as the book sounds up my alley and it's an author I know I can trust to deliver a fantastic book, why not call it a 5-star prediction? So, since I'm really hoping to support Team Snakes this month with some 5-star reads, I'm going to spend the next week or so really focusing in on reading some authors I've loved in the past, and hopefully we'll get my team some 5 stars out of this. So I've put together a little TBR. I'm just planning to pick up a couple of things for this because most of them are on the chunky side, so they might take me a little bit longer to get through. Sometimes my 5-star books are bigger books or books that take a little more thought, and we'll see how this all balances out. But I've also not been 100% sticking to my TBRs for these videos recently, so it's always possible something might change. So I'm just going to give you a quick look at what I think I'm going to be reading for this, and I'll save my full thoughts for when I actually pick these books up. Okay, first up I have Peng Shepherd, and I loved Book of M. It was an easy 5-star read for me, and I really loved The Cartographers as well. I think I gave that one a 4.5, but it may even have been a round up onto 5 on Goodreads. I picked this book up purely because of the author name, knowing really nothing about it. It is following a woman who gets the opportunity to rewrite the wrongs of her past, but it sounds like for the reader it's a bit of a choose your own adventure style story. So I'm really curious what the reading experience with this is going to turn out being. And then I have The Family Experiment by John Mars. This is one that I'm going to be listening to primarily on audio, and it is actually a buddy read for a couple of different groups that I'm in, including Lexie's Patreon, who is the team leader for this, so I'm hoping we all love it. This is set in the same world as his previous books, The One and The Passengers, and those are books that I love that still stick in my mind, even though I read them years ago. This one's looking at having a family. It's a competitive live game show where a bunch of people are given the opportunity to raise a virtual child through many stages of its life. His books are somewhat slow burn, lots of characters to keep track of, but in the sense of building suspense and secrets, and I'm looking forward to it. Next up, I have my most recent purchase. This just showed up in the mail for my pre-order, and that's Worst Case Scenario by TJ Newman. And I really enjoyed her first book. Her second book was an easy 5-star, and that was Drowning. And so I'm really excited about this one. And I saw something after ordering this where the author said they talked to a pilot and asked what they thought the worst case scenario would be, and it was for them a plane crashing into a nuclear power plant, and she turned that into a novel. So a pilot has a heart attack, the plane winds up crashing into a nuclear power plant, and we see everything that happens. This is an author who was a stewardess and has done a fantastic job turning that into the ability to write books about plane rides going really badly, and I find her books very compulsively readable, so I'm excited to check this one out. And lastly, Liz Moore wrote Long Bright River, which I absolutely loved. I recommended to a lot of people, and I was so excited to see she finally had another book coming out. And this one is The God of the Woods. This is set at a summer camp, and it is a camper gone missing story. And the camper actually is the child of the people who run the camp, I think. So I've heard good things from people I trust about this one. I think it is going to be a bit of a slow burn. It's a chunky book, but I am so excited to check this one out and have high hopes for it. So that's what I'm thinking so far. I am looking forward to a week of 5-star experiences, at least with my reading, and I am looking forward to taking you along for the ride. So I'll be back once I have an update on my first book. So when it comes to 5-star authors, one of the authors that came to mind was John Marrs, because in part I did want to get to his new book this month, so this would give me the perfect excuse. When I went on Goodreads to double check which of his books I'd given 5 stars, it turned out I actually hadn't given any of his books 5 stars. Full transparency here. I therefore looked up my blog to see why or what ratings I had given the books that I loved of his, and both The One and The Passengers I gave 4.5 stars, and I rounded down. Now, these are books I read ages ago, but the ideas and the world and everything still lives in my head. So those have now been rectified. They're now 5 stars on Goodreads. They were rounded up, and I'm therefore counting John Marrs as the perfect author for this particular vlog. And I am now reading The Family Experiment. This one just fairly recently came out. I'm reading it with a group from Lexie, from Books with Lexie's Patreon, and this is one I've been super excited to get to. The audiobook for his books, especially those that are set in this kind of same world, are really well done. There's some extra production value, there's multiple narrators, so primarily I really am enjoying following it, mostly on audio, though I do like having the ebook also because we are dealing with a fairly sizable cast. So this book is following a reality TV series. This is set in the same world as The One and The Passengers, which is a not too distant future in which the government is very involved in people's lives. You have control over things like marriage, encouraging family. So first off, I will say that there are spoilers in this book for the other books that came before. So yes, you could read this on its own, but I would highly recommend reading The One and The Passengers before you get to this one because they're well worth it. We are following each of the contestants who are part of this reality show. And the idea of this reality show is in the metaverse, in virtual reality, each of these couples, or in one case a single man, gets a virtual baby. And this baby will grow at a very accelerated rate to different life stages, and the public will be seeing them stream their interactions with these virtual children 24/7. And if the public likes them, if the public doesn't like them, they will know. They will basically act as though this is a human baby, but in a virtual landscape. This is set up partially publicity because you could spend a lot of money and get a virtual child of your own. It's a competition between them for who wins, who gets to keep their child or get money to have a child in the real world. And each of the couples or singles has secrets, has things under the surface that of course the producers are going to try to stir things up. Of course things are going to come to light. We're in the head of the competitors, so we're learning things that the public doesn't know yet. We're seeing things that are very disturbing, and I am so hooked on this book. I'm only about 40% in, but I was standing in front of the camera, so figured it was a good time before I sit and lose myself in the rest of the book to give you an update. The thing about this world that John Marrs has created is it feels so not impossible. The idea of the government getting over involved in you having a marriage, who you can marry, the politics and the prestige of whether you do or don't have children, all of these things, the idea that the public has so much to weigh in on for these people who are competing for a child, basically. So it's such an intriguing concept. It's got me entirely hooked. I think even though there is a large cast of characters, there's something with John Marr's books that really does a good job of distinguishing everyone and making the chapters really remind you who you're following, where we last saw them, and all of that is done just so well. So I'm excited to be able to continue on and finish this one up and bring you my final thoughts. Here to do a final report on the family experiment, and we're kicking off this 5-star prediction, 5-star author vlog with a high point. Hopefully this sets the tone for the whole vlog, but I loved the family experiment. This is a book that very much falls in line with what you can expect if you've read The One and you've read The Passengers. Probably more so The One, I would say, than The Passengers. I feel like The Passengers had a little bit more of the high stakes tension, where The One and this one definitely still have tension and stakes, but maybe not quite as fast paced, although it has been quite a while since I've read The One. I think with all of these books, it gives you so much to think about, so much to talk about. I'm so glad that I was doing this as a buddy read and I have other people to talk to about it. So many interesting ideas get brought up and just thought concepts, and what must go through John Marr's mind in coming up with all of this and envisioning this world that is both scary and also not something that I could say couldn't happen in our real world is incredible. I think the reveals in this and the way that each storyline progresses to different climaxes, I think was all really well done. I had some guesses along the way that were a little close here and there on some of the ways this went, but definitely a lot of guesses that were really, really wrong. I think he managed to surprise me at a lot of turns and had me growing more and more attached to some of the characters maybe I didn't initially feel drawn to. There were still some characters that I just can't like, and I don't think I'm meant to. Cadman being one of them. If you've read the book, you might know. But this was definitely a highlight book for the month for me. A 5 stars for sure. And I can't wait to see what John Marr's brings us next. So I also am not quite sure what I'm going to be reading next out of my options. So I will be back once I know. I would say I'm maybe a third of the way into All This and More by Pink Shepherd for my next previous 5-star author. I have really loved both of the previous books I've read by them. The Book of M was a definite 5-star, and I gave The Cartographers 4.5 rounded to a 5. So this was a very easy pick when it came to what I wanted to pick up for previous 5-star authors. I actually ordered this book the second I knew that Pink Shepherd was coming out with a new book. Wound up actually canceling my order because William and Morrow very kindly sent me this gifted copy, but it was one I was super excited to read. Never read anything about what it was about. I just knew I needed to have it. This is a very unique book in the sense that it is written in a choose your own adventure type of style. The premise of this one is there's a show by the name All This and More, and it is playing with a new discovery in physics called the bubble. And within this, you can go back to different moments in your life and play out what would have happened if you did something differently. And it allows you to go through doors in your past and rewrite the future. The first season of this was the most popular ever TV show, and everything went wonderfully. At the end of the show, the contestant was living a different life, being a different person, essentially, and that just integrates into the world, and it's part of the world as everyone knows it. Season 2, something went wrong. We don't know what that was. was, but something went wrong. It never aired. So when season 3 winds up happening, everyone is shocked. And this is where we meet our contestant for season 3, our main character for the book, and her name is Marsh. Actually, that's not her name. Marsh is short for Marshmallow because her friend dubbed her a marshmallow, the nicest person you could ever know. And she's been known as Marsh ever since. I don't think up till this point we've heard her real name. She is divorced. She has a daughter who she loves, but her husband cheated on her and they broke up. She has an old flame from high school that she recently connected with, but then she blew it and she gave up her law career to be a mom and a wife. So there's a lot of things in her past that she might want to revisit and reconsider where she went wrong. The way this book works, you can kind of read it just as a narrative. There is a path that just allows you to keep flipping pages, but you will get to certain points where there's a choice on the page and there's 2 different options. And one is just flip the page and one is go to a different page. So from here, I could go to the next page or I could go to page 429. If I go to page 429, I'm going to find a bit of text that I wouldn't get to if I was just reading normally. It does give you different warnings. If you're about to flip a page, you shouldn't. And then when you reach the end of a section, it'll kind of send you back in the narrative. So depending on which choice you take, you're going to be skipping parts, you're going to be going forward to other parts, but you're not going to read every single page in the book using every path. So it's a really unique concept. I think the author is doing a fantastic job of just making things meld. Like, I was really shocked when that one opportunity had me going to the end of the book, and how would that then play into the rest of the book? Would it end right away? But no, after that section, you went back not very many pages from where you last left off. So there is a merging of the different storylines and the different choices. As this is going along, weird things are happening on the show. She's seeing things from alternate realities. She's seeing things that keep popping up again and again, and we don't know the reason behind it. So I would say I'm a third of the way into the book, but really I've jumped forward a little bit, I've jumped back a little bit. So I couldn't tell you exactly what percentage of the way I'm technically through this, but I'm having a fantastic time with it. I'm really enjoying the way this is set up and the way it's got me wondering and theorizing about what is going on. So I wanted to do kind of an update a little bit early in this one just to kind of talk about it, because I think it's going to be a really hard one to talk about the plot for any point after this without getting into the spoilers of the different options that you get along the way. I will say I do have the audiobook. This was one that I got from Libro FM, and I listened to a little bit of it because I kind of wanted to see how it worked in an audio format. And it will give you the same options and tell you which chapter to switch to on the audio tracks. It's not an audiobook unless you want to do kind of the path of least resistance and just keep going with the flip to the next page path. Although there are some points as I was flipping through here, not trying to spoil myself, where it does say you can't just flip to the next page. You need to make an option. So I think there are going to be some points where this wouldn't work as a book you're listening to in the car, where you can't stop and scroll through chapters and flip to a different one. So I think I'm going to keep going on it primarily in print, especially since I'm home today and reading and in the mood to read physically. So I think I will do that, but it's easy enough. The audio is good. So if I want to get up and make lunch or do whatever I need to do, I can switch to the audio for a little bit as well. Again, because you're getting these kind of warnings, you know, stop, you need to not flip the page. The audio has those warnings in it as well. So if you're paying any attention whatsoever, you shouldn't wind up in a place you don't want to be in the story. But I think the physical reading is the easier option for this. So anyway, I'm having a fantastic time. Very glad I got the opportunity to pick this up. So I will be back once I have final thoughts. Puppy Book and Sunshine, a 5-star reading experience. It is Monday morning, and that makes me sad because I do have to go to work, but I have a lot of exciting updates for you on the 5-star front. So let's get into what Sunday looked like. Yesterday was a fantastic 5-star day for sure. I spent a good amount of time reading outside in the morning with Kylie. It was finally a little bit cooler. We have had a huge run of humidity, and yesterday that humidity at least finally broke, so we had actually a cool breeze in the morning and a little bit of time before the heat drove me indoors to sit outside, have my coffee, and read. And then I watched a bunch of reading sprints on Mel's channel from Eleanor Reads, and then took over and did some sprints on my channel and wound up spending about 6 hours sprinting last night. And we had Kylie in a frog costume and good chats in the chat, so it was a lot of fun. But all that sprinting all day got me some good amount of reading time in. So I finished up all this and more, and I had a fantastic time with this. It was just a fun, different reading experience. And I think in the end, the choose your own adventure style of this really added an element of fun to this story. I think it still left me, I feel like I read the majority of this book. I don't feel like I missed a lot of pages. I wound up reading the different alternate endings that you could do at the end just to kind of see what the different options wound up with. There are a few pages here or there that I do know that I skipped in the middle because there were alternate routes I could have taken. But I think for the most part, with the way the story kind of separates and comes back together, I feel like I read probably at least 90% of the book. And I just had a fantastic time with it. The story gripped me. It kept me hooked in. It is closer to a 500-page book. Again, not reading every single page because of the format, but that kept me physically reading this all day and reading the entire thing in a single day. I think the character and what they're going through and the way the allure of this ability to change moments in your life and reframe things, I think was really a good exploration of her character and of the way this would impact anyone's character, really. I think the complexity of the plot, and I can just imagine kind of the tracking system to figure out not only the plot and the twists and what's going on behind the scene that maybe our main character doesn't know, and also the alternate paths that the reader might be going down, were really well laid out. There were things in the end that I wish we had been able to explore. I think with this type of story, you're always going to have things where the reader's thinking, well, why didn't they try this? Why didn't they do this? But none of it was enough to bring my enjoyment down, really. So in the end, this was an easy 5-star read, both for the book, the writing, and just the experience of it all. And then I finished that one up on sprints, and we decided to do a couple more sprints, and that meant I had to start a new book. And that was Worst Case Scenario by TJ Newman. This is a book that I pre-ordered in the Target sale. It showed up at my door last week, and I'm already almost halfway through it. Look at me actually reading a book the week it arrives. Who am I? But this one has me hooked already. I really enjoyed her first book, which was Falling. That's one that I did as part of a buddy read where we read the first half, did a midway discussion, theorized about what was going on, and then read the second half and did a final chat. And it was really an interesting book to talk about, but I think doing that format of buddy read, I think allowed us to pick it apart a bit more than if I had just sat down and binge read it. And I think that made me give it a 4-star as opposed to if I had just binge read it and gone off vibes with the rating, I probably would have rated it higher. Her second book, Drowning, I loved that one. That one really grabbed me by the throat, held on the entire time. That was an easy 5-star read. So this is one that I've been highly anticipating, and it starts with a bang. The prologue basically gives us what the setup of the book is. A pilot with 295 people on board has a widowmaker heart attack while he's flying the plane. The co-pilot's in the bathroom, and there's just a flight attendant in the cockpit with the pilot. He's immediately dead. He lands on the yoke, which is driving the plane down to the ground, and she can't move him. She gets on the radio trying to tell ground control she needs help to figure out how to turn off his yoke, basically. And instead of telling ground control, we're going down, we're about to die, she announces that to the entire cabin of people, and things do not go well. They wind up crashing, but the twist to this particular book is they wind up crashing at a nuclear power station. And this is then not just the death of the 295 people on board and the chaos that comes on the ground from pieces of the plane flying all over this area, but also the fact that the nuclear power plant and all of the nuclear waste that it holds has a lot of damage, and the people on the ground are pretty much cut off from the surrounding town for various reasons. This is kind of small town America, and they have to make things safe for the world. This is considered a catastrophic level emergency and could mean complete disaster for not only the United States, but the world in general. There's a countdown at the top of each chapter, and it starts around 16 hours and 35 minutes, counting down to 0 hour when things are going to go really, really even worse than they already are. We're following a bunch of different characters, from first responders to workers at the nuclear power plant to children and a school that's nearby. There are people who were on the ground who were hit with kind of shrapnel from the plane, some of that shrapnel being like an entire wing of burning fuel, and emergency workers trying to help them. There's just a lot going on, and she does a really good job of setting up the premise, and I feel like we've been getting a lot of information in the first half about nuclear power plants and why this is such a danger in a way that I think is still entertaining. There's a bit of an info dump feeling to it in places, as the people at the plant are updating others who don't know how dangerous the situation is, but it never felt like I was losing attention on any of that. It definitely is amping up the pressure and the suspense, and we're switching POVs pretty quickly and getting into both the professional side and the personal lives of the people working here, because of course their families are close. They know their families are in the danger zone as well if things go really, really badly. So I'm excited to get back home tonight and get into the second half of this one. The first half flew super quickly, so pun not intended. So I think I should be able to finish this up. I think once I get going, I'm not going to want to put it back down. So this 5-star author vlog is going very well. I am back on my 5-star journey with Worst Case Scenario. I did finish this one up yesterday. It had completely slipped my mind, I don't know why, that I had the audiobook for this one from Hachette on NetGalley. So I did wind up listening to this a little bit yesterday during my commute, and the audiobook has some extra production value. When they're talking on the radios, you get kind of that radio sound to it, and it helped distinguish the switching back and forth between POVs pretty well, and I did enjoy listening in that format. And then last night I switched over to reading this in print toward the end as well. I would say this one didn't quite grab my attention the same way that Drowning did, which was the last book that I read by T.J. Newman, but this one came pretty close. It definitely had a lot more educating to be done on what was going on, because the average layperson doesn't probably know all the ins and outs of nuclear waste and what it means when storage is breached and all of those types of things. So there is a little bit more to explain, I think, than I remember there needing to be with a plane underwater or a hostage situation in the first book she wrote. But if this wasn't a full 5-star, it was a really high 4.5 and certainly a rounded to 5-star. I think we get a lot of poignant moments in here. There are lives on the line. Not everyone's going to live through this experience. There's going to be lasting effects. There's a whole nation and a whole world waiting to hear how things are going to go as the countdown to absolute disaster keeps getting closer and closer. And I think it builds the tension really well. And it's one I'd recommend. It's not one I'd recommend if you're already afraid of flying or nuclear power plants. Maybe this is one to avoid. I don't know. Maybe it would make it even scarier and more fun. I wouldn't say I was scared at any point with this one, but there were definitely moments where the tension built up to the point where I couldn't have put it down. I needed to keep flipping pages. So that was definitely a win for me. And then because, you know, I don't stick to TBRs when it comes to videos, I did get an audio arc for a book that fit this video perfectly. And that's Haunt Sweet Home by Sarah Pinsker. And this is a novella. It's only about 176 pages. The audio, I think, is somewhere between 4 and 5 hours. And I have really enjoyed this author's writing in the past. Her short story collection, Sooner or Later, Everything Falls into the Sea, was a 5-star short story collection for me, which is a rarity that there's a collection where I enjoy all the stories in it enough to give the whole collection 5 stars. So when this one came up, I had to request it. Thankfully, Macmillan Audio approved me right away, and I decided to throw it in here. I'm already at the halfway point, even though I only started it last night. Haunt Sweet Home is a reality TV series, and it's part Ghost Hunters and part home renovation show, where the cast of this show is going in with families as they've bought their new home and telling them about all the haunting stuff that's going on. Sure, some of it's probably caused by the production team causing the haunting themselves, playing weird noises, sneaking around in the background, but maybe there's also stuff going on in reality. We're following Maria, who's kind of been the family joke that she never settles into a career. So when her cousin offers her a position as a PA on the show, she signs up. She finds out she's going to be working the night shift. She barely sees her cousin, but she's sent out into the field just to create strange noises, strange sounds, and do those types of things for this show. At the point I'm at now, about the halfway point, we've just been introduced to a new crew member, and this person seems to have something especially spooky about them. And is it real? Is it just movie magic? I'm looking forward to finding out. We're also following some clips in between chapters or periodically where her cousin is actually filming an episode of the show in which there seems to be a very real entity in a house. There's a library. This entity is throwing books. This entity is doing things the show's never experienced before. So I'm very interested to see how this is going to wind up. So far, it's a very easy read. I'm not sure I'm getting 5-star feels from it, but it's entertaining. I flew through the first half while I was getting some stuff done last night and look forward to continue. And I'll be back once I have more thoughts. Okay, so serious question. How is it only Tuesday? I know it's probably not Tuesday when you're saying this, but man, is this feeling like a long week. And today was a very long day. But the plus side of that is a good chunk of it was doing a lot of busy work that didn't require a lot of brain power. So I was able to get a lot of audiobook time in. So I do have updates. I finished up Haunt Sweet Home, and generally this was an entertaining audiobook. It wasn't a book that I felt super invested in. I think because we're following a main character whose name is Mara. I think I said Maria this morning, which is the problem with filming updates before I've had my caffeine. But Mara is seeing behind the scenes of these hauntings, and she's causing these hauntings. So I went into this kind of expecting a haunting story, and it gets to that point, but most of the book is more about debunking potential horrors because we see them happening. We see her hiding a fog machine. We see her hiding in a forest to create some mayhem for the people who are on the show. I think it was entertaining. It took a couple of twists I didn't expect. I liked the aspects of it being kind of self-discovery and her discovering herself and her path in life a little bit, but it wasn't quite the 5-star read I was hoping for. It was more of a 3.5 rounded to 4, but overall, still really glad that I got this audio arc. Thank you again to Macmillan Audio, and it was a good time. And then getting back on track with my TBR, I am also now halfway into The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. And Liz Moore wrote Long Bright River, which I loved. And it's been a really long time since I read it, but it still sticks in my head as something that I recommend quite a bit. So I think I went into this with really high expectations. And for the most part, they're being met. I think this is really well written. I think the intrigue level is good. The setting of the camp is good. It is, however, a little on the slow side, and I think that comes from me having just read a couple super engaging, fast-paced type of reads, and this one then is a historical kind of, I mean, it is historical. It's set in 1995 and thereabouts and going back in time and forward in time. I don't think this time is super relevant to the story apart from the fact that it needs to be in an era before campers would have phones and digital age and all of that. I think the atmosphere in this is really good. I'm really intrigued. The whole play on the fact that this camper is missing and her brother went missing as a child before she was born and how that impacts the family and her life and just their life in general is really interesting to play out. So I am excited to keep reading this one, but it is a little bit slower going just because it is a slow paced novel. A really well written one I'm enjoying, but it's just not quite the same flip through the pages non-stop read that I've had with a couple of these other books. So I'll be back once I finish this one up and let you know my final thoughts. It's been a super long day, so I'm looking a little rough, but I did, as I was pulling into the house this evening, finish up The God of the Woods. And literally, Kylie was waiting there, waiting to say hello and welcome me home, and I had 30 seconds left, so I just sat in the car and enjoyed the AC for an extra 30 seconds and finished up the book. Overall, this one I really enjoyed. I'm torn on my rating for it because it just didn't quite deliver those 5 stars, love it, shout it from the rooftop type of feels, and I'm sad about that a little bit. But I still had a really good time with it. It's a super solid 4-star read for me. I think the characters had a lot of depth to them. We had good POV distribution. We spent time with each of our characters and got to know them. And even as there were kind of suspicious things happening with quite a few, we still got to know them and like them and all of that as well. I think that was well done. The ending, I think, worked out really well. I think it did a good job of kind of giving a few clues along the way, but also not 100% revealing everything before you get to the resolution. So overall, a good, really solid read. Definitely still an auto read author for me. I need to go and look into their backlist because I do believe Liz Moore has a couple of things that came out before Long Bright River that I just have never picked up. So that needs to be on my to-do list. But with this one, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this vlog. Though the end of this vlog wasn't quite as successful as the start of this vlog, I think this definitely shows I need to make sure I'm getting back to my 5-star authors. I'm pretty stingy when it comes to giving out 5 stars. I give a lot of 4 stars. I don't give very many 5 stars. And quite a few of the ones that I give on Goodreads are probably a 4.5 rounded up, even more so. So solid 5 stars are few and far between from me, but I have proven to myself that I can definitely give 5 stars out to authors that have a proven track record with me. So I need to make a point to do this more often. But with this, let me know in the comments below, who are the authors you count on to give you 5-star reads when you pick up one of their books? Are there any authors that I read for this one that you also really enjoy? Have you read any of these books or any of them on your TBR? Let me know all of those things. And if you've made it this far and you don't have anything to comment, I think a star emoji would be the appropriate choice. I feel like this was a very successful reading week, and I was happy to help support Team Snakes with some actual 5-star reads this week. So with all of that, if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button down below and subscribe if you'd be interested in more of my content. And I will be seeing you in my next video very soon.